Okay, picking up on page 38, we just finished talking about the block quote. So the next thing to talk about is phrases. And phrases are, I usually call them decorations, but it doesn't really matter what you call them. This is a way to go in and make changes to the text. For example, if I go here and I want this to show up like as a bold thing, I use this thing called strong. Hey, by the way, you notice how this thing always adds isn't that kind of annoying? Sometimes it's very, very handy to have it put in the tag, and then sometimes it isn't. So little lamb. And then over here, I want this, for example, to have some, be in italics or some sort of a emphasis. And so I'm going to use EM for emphasis. So all this is doing is just decorating text. Let's just do it one more time. I'll render this in the page, show you what it talks about. So Mary had a little, now in bold, lamb, it's in italics. Now in the old days, if you had been programming with HTML before you are HTML4 guru, you may have used like B for bold and I for italics. Don't do that. That's the old stuff. Yes, you can still use bold and you can still use italics, but their meaning has changed. What bold now basically means is the text is in bold but has no special emphasis or meaning whatsoever. It's visual only. There's no other cue involved, just visual. Same with I. I means visually this term is in italics, but it has no special meaning whatsoever. And the significance of that goes back to accessibility. For example, if this was, let's say, for example, you were doing this with a screen reader, okay? It would come up and say, Mary had a little lamb. You know, it would emphasize the word because it's a strong word. But if you put it in just B tags, it would just say, Mary had a little lamb. In other words, yeah, okay, it's in bold, but it doesn't mean anything. There's no special significance to it. So there's an entire chart there. The table on page 39, table 2.1, you probably need to look at that because there's a bunch of these little tags. And so we're going to use those later on. I tell you, strong and emphasis are the ones that I use a great deal. There's another one. There's one designed for pre-formatted text. So I'm going to grab this one more time. And let's say, for example, I really, really want this exactly the way it is to appear rendered on page. I don't want to have to go here and add, breaks in every single one of these things. I want to appear just the way it is. Well, there's a tag that you can do. It's called pre. And pre means pre-formatted. And so I'm going to grab all this text and put it inside my pre-formatted guys. Now, this is a little confusing, so just bear with me. First of all, let me just show you what it'll do, all right? Because it means take whatever I gave you and do it just like that, okay? So let's view this in the browser. And I'm going, well, that's not exactly what I really kind of meant. Well, if you wanted it to appear up against the left margin, well then, by God, you're going to have to make it appear on the left margin here, right? It's quite literally what the heck you told it to do. I mean, this is pre-formatted. Whatever is in here, that's what it's going to appear. So, all right, I know this looks a little funky when you're kind of looking at HTML, but when you get to a pre-tag, things could look a little weird. Now, when I go and view this in the browser, it's going to be up against the left margin. Cool? All right, the pre-formatted tag. Now, I actually use a pre-formatted tag occasionally when I'm doing programming. So, for example, let me pop off to my webpage for just a second. So, www.immigrate.com. Let's go find an article of some sort that's here we go. I'll just pick the first one. Doesn't matter. Okay. So, this is a normal paragraph of everyday normal. Well, first of all, let's take a look. Hey, let's just start at the beginning. Okay. So, I have a title. That's probably like an L1. I mean, an H1. This is probably like a H2. An H2 heading, a paragraph, and then I did a block quote, right, that squashed it in, and I did pre-formatting. So it squashed it in on the left and right, and mean just put it down exactly the way I wrote it, because otherwise this gets very, very confusing and it's kind of hard to do. So that's an example of pre-formatting and block quote at the same time. Cool. All right, let's close that. All righty, so that's what the pre-tag is all about. Okay, now there's a problem with nesting. Let me give you an example. Let's say I go in here and say paragraph, and I say, I don't know, Mary had a little lamb. And then I go here and I say, I want to make this strong. And I want to make this emphasis. And I'm going to have to go through and move these guys around. Okay. Okay. So what I've done is I've got these things out of order. Instead of having the strong terminated by the closing tag, I have another tag in between. And so I have another tag, but it's not. So let me go ahead and just, now here's an interesting thing. Is this going to work? Is this going to be strong and then not going to be italics? Is that how that's going to work? Well, actually, believe it or not, the browsers are pretty doggone forgiving. Okay, they really are. They basically say, you know, that wasn't exactly bright, but okay, so that's what you want. Now, this is an example of what's called nesting, and actually lack of nesting. This is wrong. In fact, I get a little green squiggly tag there that tells me this is wrong. So let me show you what it should look like. It should be that the strong is matched with the /strong, and the EM tag is matched with the EM tag. Okay, like that. So now I don't have any green squigglies anymore, which means I've done it right. So, yes, in order for this to work, you really ought to have these tags match. Don't terminate one before you terminate the other. Basically what they're talking about. All right, proper nesting. On page 40, they introduce a new concept called the ordered list. And so I'm going to go here, and this is, instead of just having one tag like this decorations, you're basically just using like EM or strong or pre or block, you know. These guys require a series of tags. So the first one is called I would call it like the container, OL for ordered list. But you're not done. Now you need to have another tag inside that's called the list item, LI. And I say, I don't know, this is, I guess it doesn't matter if I misspell things. This is part of a list. And let's do another one. Yet another list. Okay, so I'm going to render this, see what it looks like. So an ordered list, what would you think an ordered list would look like? Well, it's basically a numbered list, like 1, 2, 3. So it does it does the indentation, and then it automatically numbers these things. Isn't that pretty cool? All right. Now there's some attributes you can use to talk about how to decorate. Instead of having it 1, 2, 3. What if I wanted it to be like ABC, right? So I'm going to go here at the beginning tag, because all attributes are happening at the beginning tag, and not the beginning tag of the LI, but the beginning tag of that container up at the top. Okay. So what if I went in here and said type, and then said capital A? Let's look at that and see what that says. So I'm going to render this. And now it has A and B rather than 1 and 2. Isn't that pretty cool? Well, let's say, for example, that maybe you had this and you wanted to have a continuous list, and you broke a paragraph and you want to pick up where you left off. So I want to start at something else. So I want to say start 3. Okay, what is that going to do? Well, it means start at the third number. In this case, it's letters, but give me a break. So, you know, C and D rather than A and B and C. So those are 2 attributes. So here's another rule. So remember the rules for attributes, because when it comes time for test questions, rules are very often test questions. So the rules for attributes are lowercase, separated by, not separated, but joined with a equal sign, no space before or after the equal sign, some sort of text inside quotes. Even if it's a number, it's still inside quotes. And if you have multiple one of these attributes, they're separated by spaces, like this example here. Okay? You guys got that? Nod your head, because that's going to be on the exam. Let's do an unordered list. And so I'm just going to copy this kind of as a starting point because I'm lazy. I'm going to go here and do paste. Instead of an OL. Oh, by the way, notice how I light up this contents of this entire beginning tag and I change it. I'm going to change it to a UL, unordered list, like that. Huh, okay, I thought that was going to change it for me. Oh, if I'd lit up the entire thing and changed it, it would have changed the bottom tag. Okay, so let's look at what an unordered list looks like. So, here we go. And an unordered list is basically just a bullet list. Okay, so an unordered list is a bullet list. And there's some attributes. You can have a type attribute. Let's do one. This is kind of silly, but what the heck, right? I'm going to go here and say type square. And let's do this one more time. And didn't work. Okay. Oh, I didn't mean type of. That's why it didn't work. That thing went away from me, huh? And it has little squares rather than round bullets. Okay. So that part is pretty straightforward. The next thing on page 44 we're going to talk about is what's called a dictionary list. And so this is formatted just like you'd expect in a dictionary, where you have like a term, and then you have just a description, and then maybe another term, another description. So, the term is kind of, and then there's like an indent, then you have the description. So let's just do one. And just like before, there's a container. So but this time the container, so what would you think the abbreviation would be for a dictionary list? What do you think? Maybe DL for dictionary list? That's pretty cool. And what do you think would be like the term? DT? So the term is kumquat. And then what do you think maybe the definition would be? Like DD? Hey, this stuff is not hard to remember, is it? Okay. So a small orange looking fruit. Oh, dang. Okay, let's do another one. So I have one list, one DL, that's the container. The container tells me where it is, physically on the page, and all these things are analogous to the list item. So I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do DT wombat. And then I'm going to do a DD for definition. Oh, furry critter. Okay, let's render this in the browser here and see what it looks like. So, just like I said, it's the term, it's indented, and if there had been more lines, it would have just done like one of these paragraphs. It would look somewhat similar to this. All the text would have been stopped at that one indentation point. So that's, in a nutshell, the dictionary stuff. See, this HTML stuff is not tough. There's a lot of things to remember, but how to make something bold, how to make something italics, how to make a paragraph, how to make a bullet list. This is not tough. Okay, this is a good place to start for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.